This is Advanced Math, Unit 4, Lesson 5. Graph y equals cosine x and y equals sine of x. We're graphing cosine and sine functions, again, reviewing more of the translations that we've talked about the last few days. Okay, graph number 1. Y equals -3 parentheses, and I'm going to start that over and I apologize. Y equals negative sine parentheses 3x plus pi close parentheses plus 1. Y equals negative sine parentheses 3x plus pi close parentheses plus 1. All right, let's get through this. The amplitude is positive 1 because amplitude is always positive. You take the absolute value of the -1 and you get positive 1. Period, remember, is 2 pi over b. 2 pi over b, b is the 3, it's a coefficient of x. So 2 pi over 3 is your period. Your vertical shift is your outside. It's positive 1, so it's going 1 in the upward direction because it's positive. Horizontal shift. Remember, we find horizontal shift by taking whatever's inside the parentheses, setting it equal to 0, and solving. 3x plus pi equals 0. This is where you want to actually do the work, because if you were just doing the opposite like I've talked about before, you say, oh, negative pi. No, it's not negative pi, because after you subtract pi, you do end up dividing by 3. So you want to make sure that you actually do the work. Divide by 3, x equals negative pi over 3. Which means this is going to the left. Okay, I am going to put a star right here by the horizontal shift because remember, whenever there's a horizontal shift, that changes our start and our end. Our original start is always 0, and our original end is always whatever the period is. But when we have a horizontal shift, it changes the start and the end. Okay, so if you remember from the previous lesson, your start will always be your horizontal shift, negative pi over 3, and your end has to be, your total period length is going to be 2 pi over 3. So what you do is you take your start and you add the length of 2 pi over 3. Negative pi over 3, that's the start, plus the period length, 2 pi over 3, equals pi over 3. So this is all the information we are going to use here to graph. Okay. I know, remember we've talked about before doing your vertical shift first. I know I'm shifting up 1. I'm going to draw my fake axis really light because that's not part of the graph. It's not an asymptote. It's just there as a guide. Okay, and then my period length, or my amplitude is 1, which means from this 1, I'm going to go up 1 to 2. That's going to be my max. I'm going to go down 1 to 0. That's going to be my min. So my graph will oscillate between 2 and 0. What's the length between 2 and 0? 2. What's 2 cut in half? 1, the length of the amplitude. All right, so again, I shifted up 1 because that was my vertical shift. And from there, my amplitude is 1, so up 1 and down 1. Up 1 to 2, down 1 to 0. Okay, let's get our start and end. Our start is negative pi over 3. Our end is positive pi over 3. Really quick, to find your period length here, what would it be? Pi over 3, take away negative pi over 3 is 2 pi over 3, which should be the period length, and indeed it is. When you do the right minus the left, you should always end up with your period length. That is just a double checker. Okay, you add these two and cut them in half, you get 0. 0 plus pi over 3 cut in half is pi over 6. You get that by pi over 3 times 1/2, and this would be negative pi over 6. Okay, this is the sine function, which is the snake function. It's negative, so it's reflecting across the x-axis. So, first point here, it starts at the 0, fake 0. The next key point, instead of going to a max, it's going to a min. Next key point, the 0 is a key point, is the fake 0. Next key point is a maximum, back to the fake 0. And there is our hill and our valley, our beautiful sine graph that has been translated up 1 and to the right, or to the left, pi over 3 with the period of 2 pi over 3. Now again, if they ask you what are your zeros, these are not zeros, those are the fake zeros. You only have one 0, and it's negative pi over 6. Okay, number 2. Y equals 3 sine x over 2 plus 1. All right, amplitude is the absolute value of your leading coefficient. It is 3. Period length, 2 pi over b is 2 pi over, b is not 2, it's 1/2. Can you see that the coefficient here is 1/2? X over 2 is equivalent to 1/2 x. So it's not 2 pi over 2, it's 2 pi over 1/2. Okay, equals 2 pi times 2, which is 4 pi. You can do that work on your own. When you multiply by the reciprocal, you get 4 pi. Vertical shift equals 1. It's going up 1 because it's positive. Horizontal shift, there's no horizontal shift. So we don't have to worry about adjusting our start and our end because there is no horizontal shift. So since there's no horizontal shift, we're going to start at 0 and end at our period, 4 pi, just like we did when we first started these. All right. So it has a vertical shift of 1. And again, these lines here you can erase when you're done. You don't have to, but just keep in mind they're not asymptotes. They're nothing special. It's just a guide to help us figure out our graph. Okay, period is 4 pi. 4 pi cut in half is 2 pi. 2 pi cut in half is pi. 1 pi, 2 pi, this would be 3 pi. And then the 4 pi. Okay, our amplitude is 3, which means if this is 1, and from here I'm going to oscillate between my max and min, I'm going to go up 3 and down 3. So 1, 2, 3, that puts me at 4. Can you see that? From this fake axis, my amplitude is 3, so from here I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, that gets me a max of 4. I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, that gives me a minimum of -2. That means I'm going to oscillate between 4 and -2, and really quick, what's the length between 4 and -2? It is 6, and 6 cut in half is 3. Okay, it's positive sine, which means it's going to do the regular hill, and then my fake 0, my next key point is a maximum. My next key point is a fake 0. My next key point is a minimum. And my last key point is a fake 0. So I have this hill and then the valley. And that there is your sine graph. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. A, what is the maximum value? Write that down. What is the max value? The maximum value is the highest point here, and what is that value? It is a 4. Part B, what is the minimum value? The minimum value is the lowest point on the graph, and looking there, it is -2. And part C, where does the minimum value occur? Where does the minimum value occur? Okay, here is the minimum value. Where does it occur is asking for the x value. It happens at -2. Where does it occur is 3 pi. And these are the type of questions you need to know how to answer. You need to know how to read your graph and understand what is going on. Again, this is one period length. This graph does continue oscillating between 4 and -2 forever and ever in both directions. Okay, moving on to number 3. For the function y equals sine pi over 3 parentheses x minus 2, A, what is the max value? B, what is the minimum value? And C, where does the max occur? Okay, so it's asking all these things. We're going to go through and graph it and then go back and answer. Okay, amplitude, absolute value of the leading coefficient. There's a 1 there. Absolute value of 1 is 1. Period length is 2 pi over, now this coefficient of x happens to be on the outside. It doesn't matter, and I believe I've said that before, whether it's inside or outside. If you were to distribute that in, it would still be there in front of the x. So 2 pi over 3, multiply by the reciprocal. It's 2 pi times 3 over pi, which equals 6. Your period length is 6. Your vertical shift, there's no number out here, none. Horizontal shift, there is a horizontal shift, which means there's going to be a start and an end, so I'm going to put a star here. Whenever there's a horizontal shift, which there is, you will have to adjust your start and your end. Okay, take the inside and set it equal to 0. Some kids always ask, do I take the coefficient out here? Let's see, pi over 3 times x minus 2 equals 0. You can distribute the pi over 3 or divide the pi over 3. I'm just going to divide because it's easier to get rid of it right away. X minus 2 equals 0 divided by pi over 3 is still 0. Add your 2, x equals 2. So technically, it's really what's in the inside. That pi over 3 on the outside is not going to impact, it does impact your period, but it does not change my horizontal shift. When I set it equal to 0, I still get x equals positive 2. And if I were to distribute this through and solve, I still would get positive 2. You can put this in pause and try it. Pi over 3x minus 2 pi over 3 equals 0. Solve it and you're still going to end up with 2. If you'd like, I can show you that in class tomorrow as well. Okay, so our horizontal shift is 2. So the start is a horizontal shift, which is 2, and the end is the start, which is 2, plus the period length, which is 6. Your end is always your start plus your period, and that is 8. If you do anything and you're adding pi's with numbers that don't have pi's, you've done something wrong. Notice there's no pi in my period, my start or my end, or my horizontal shift. It's always going to work out that way. Okay, let's go ahead and graph. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put these really light, so I suggest you do the same. If you're writing in pen, then you may want to just change to pencil because we will be erasing some. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to have a lot more points than we need, and we really only need 5 key points, so I'm going to do some erasing. They start at 2, end at 8, and we find our middle by, like the midpoint, always the midpoint you add and cut in half. 2 plus 8 is 10, 10 cut in half is 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my start, my end, my middle. 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 cut in half is 3.5. So I'm going to erase these little markings here so they don't confuse me later. If you don't like 3.5, then 7 over 2 would work as well. Okay, 8 plus 5 is 13, and 13 cut in half is 6.5. Again, I'm going to erase these little ones out here so they don't confuse me or confuse us when we're trying to graph. So my 5 key points are 2, 3.5, 5, 6.5, and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 key points. Okay, so did we have a vertical shift? None. Sorry, I forgot my E is probably bugging you. Vertical shift is none. Horizontal shift is 2. So we're going to start here and end here. It is positive sign, so it's going to start at 0. Sorry, the amplitude is 1. Let me mark that, 1 and negative 1. Start at 0, max is 1, next key point is 0, next key point is the minimum, and then 0. So you have your hill and then your valley. And that there is your beautiful sine graph. It looks like I didn't graph any cosine, so I'll have to do one of those with you in class. What is the value? What is the maximum value? How high does the graph go? It is a 1. What is the min? What is the minimum value? The minimum value is, and that there should have said value. What is the minimum value? The minimum value is negative 1. Where does the max occur? So sometimes they ask for the max, sometimes they ask for the min. This one is where does the maximum occur? Well, it happens, the maximum value is 1. It occurs at the 3.5. Again, the notes were titled cosine and sine. I only graphed sine today. I will show you a cosine graph in class. That is it for this lesson.